slides. I hope you received the slides before we started the session today, but if you haven't, I can put the link in the chat for you, and Ambreen can potentially repost it multiple times. I understand that when we put something in the chat and we have new people coming in, they don't see the history of the chat. So that's why we may be doing it multiple times. But if you have the slides and it's easier for you to use them, just have them printed or open them in a separate window, please feel free to do so as well. The link is in the chat now. And Ambreen, if you ever have a chance, occasionally just repost it. All right. Now, Georgina and Ambreen and anybody else, questions before we start? I know so many of you are muted, but we have 1 more minute before we start the session, or maybe 2. So if there's anything you have questions about, please feel free to put them in the chat. Chat will be something that we'll be using a lot today, just because we have a big group coming in. But of course, if there's anything else you need to talk about or address, let us know as well. Okay.
Then Georgina, you can start then after a minute or so, right?
Okay.
Introduce Monika. Okay.
All right. So in the meantime, maybe it will be a bit easier. I'll share the screen just so that we have the first slide on the screen as well. And that way things will be kind of moving and getting organized a bit more. And I just want to make sure that our interpreters are pinned. Maybe I can do that. So with the interpreters, so Laura and Marianne, should I pin you or would you like to pin yourself? What can we do to help?
Simone is actually asking if you could pin them so that it would be easier for us to follow along. That would be helpful.
Okay, and I'm going to.
I think it's spotlight for everyone.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. There's spotlight and pinning. So you are spotlighted now. And then,
yeah, the spotlight will then allow me to see both the PowerPoint and the interpreters side by side. That's perfect. Simone.
Okay. And then with switching between the interpreters, how do we do that? Do you tell me you want me to spotlight the second interpreter, or can you do it on your own as an interpreter?
If you give us host privileges, then we can spotlight ourselves.
Fantastic. Okay, make co-host. Perfect. So this is fantastic. Make co-host. So Laura and Marianne, if you could just confirm that you can see the tools. Make co-host.
I see ASL2 is the co-host now. Yes. Okay. Yep. And I have it too.
Fantastic. Awesome. Okay. See, we're always learning as we do those sessions. It's always a learning experience. All right. And now, Simone, should we pin you?
All right. Simone's saying, I don't think you need to actually pin mine.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So as long as we are
I'll just be watching.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Fantastic. All right. So please let me know if we are ready to start. I know we potentially will have some latecomers, so that's okay as well. Okay. Georgina, what do you think? Should we start?
I think so. It's 2:33. We'll just have people come in.
Yeah, I'll admit them. I'll keep on admitting them, so you can start.
I can start. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's great to see all the faces. Today we're doing the digital training, Demystifying Google Apps. And it's a series of 3 consecutive workshops. So we'll meet again next week and the following week. And they are being facilitated by Monika from Alpha Plus, which many of you already know. And we're going to explore these Google Apps and become familiar with them. So who is Monika? Some of you know, but Monika is the organizational development consultant with Alpha Plus in education and technology. So drawing from her many years of experience, Monika supports adult education service providers to identify and implement technologies and tools that improve their work in the classroom and reduce administrative burden. Yippee, we love that. She is skilled in applied education technologies, marketing and communications, and social media platform management. She loves using a brief solution approach in her coaching practices. In her work as a technology consultant, Monika applies her knowledge of mobile apps, digital tools, and customized websites to help LBS clients better support adult learners. She specializes in technology needs assessments, implementing learning and communication tools, organizational plans and data tracking, knowledge sharing and exchange, and loves delivering workshops and webinars. Monika is also the proud recipient of a 2019 Leaders in Adult Learning Award from Literacy Link Niagara. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Her coaching clients can take advantage of her technical expertise in the uptake and application of Google Apps, Microsoft suites of products, e-learning and LMS systems, social media and event tools, online conferencing tools, graphic design software, and e-commerce platforms. And I'm sure there's more and more and more. So welcome. It's going to be a fun, interactive, as well as informative couple of hours, 1 hour and a half afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgina. I really appreciate the introductions. That was a long introduction, my goodness.
Well, when you have it, you have it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Before we
Thank
jump
you.
into the actual presentation, just to give you a bit of overview of where we are going with our sessions. First of all, I want to thank MTML for inviting us. Our team at Alpha Plus is always keen to work with different programs, including MTML. So this is a pleasure for us. And then for the sessions we are doing, it's going to be 3 sessions. And we are going to start with the basics today. Some of you may be very familiar with technology and Google Drive and Google Docs and other Google applications. Others may be new to it. So we figured we'll start slow with kind of bigger overview today. And then as we navigate to the sessions in the next 2 weeks and then in a month, there will be a bit more detail as well. So the first one today is Google Drive and Docs, sort of the beginning of it, quick introductions to some of those tools. My hope will be that if we do give you a bit of homework or things you can try after the session, that will be fantastic. When we reconvene for the second session, we're going to look at Google Forms and Sheets. That will be a bit more specific applications that you may benefit from. And in between, we always encourage you to try and play and explore different things and contact us as well. And the last one will be Google Slides and other cool apps. If some of you are actually using the Google applications, you will know that there's so many of them. We'll just touch on a few during our meetings together, but there's a lot. So we are always keen to learn from you and hear from you about things you're doing and using and so on. So hopefully you will find those sessions beneficial, and then they will give you a bit more tips and resources and make you a bit more comfortable with Google Apps as well. So we will be providing the slides. We got the slides before the session today. They will be shared later on as well. And also we are recording. The recordings are for you to review what was covered in the session if you need to go back and look at them again. And I apologize, my phone is silenced, but it's still ringing. So if you hear my phone, I apologize for that. Now, a bit of housekeeping when it comes to Zoom. Some of you may be using Zoom a lot. Some of you may be new to it. It will also depend if you're using your phone or desktop version. The tools may be slightly different. For this purpose here, I'm just using the screen capture of a desktop view. So if you're on a laptop or desktop, very likely you will have a bar at the bottom of the screen when you're in a Zoom application. And on the left, you will have a muting option, so you can mute and unmute yourself. There's also an option to turn on the video if you would like to do that. Sometimes it really helps with the bandwidth. You will have the chat button, so you can click on that and it will open the chat window where you can put questions or comments for us, and we will be watching them and trying to answer them. And also there is a reactions button. So if you just want to give us a quick notification, whether just to put a smiley face or thumbs up, that's also a tool that you can use to give us a bit of feedback as we are in the session as well. All right. Now, extra Zoom tips in case you get lost in your Zoom application. Again, those mostly apply to the desktop or laptop version of your Zoom. When you're in the Zoom application on the phone or tablet, it's a bit more contained. But on the desktop or laptop, very often the toolbar for Zoom actually disappears. So that can be changed in settings. You can actually in your settings say that you want to have it permanently enabled. But if it does disappear, you can just move your mouse over the screen and it's going to show up at the bottom again. So it really never fully disappears. It just may hide for a second from you. Another tip is that if you, during the session, navigate to a different window, you're doing something, you're checking something, your Zoom window may kind of disappear. It may get smaller. And if you have that, sometimes it changes into a window that's a tiny bit smaller, sits somewhere in the corner. Look for that and look for a tiny square with a green arrow. It's going to, basically what happened is it got minimized and then you can enlarge it again by clicking on the green arrow. So that's always a handy tool when you're in Zoom and you get lost a bit in where your Zoom application is. The last tip is if you really went and did something as we are presenting, you navigated to a different browser, you open a different application, and you do not see Zoom at all. It just disappeared for you. Very often, if you are looking at your taskbar at the bottom of your screen, you will see the different applications you have open. One of them will have the Zoom icon, and if you click on it, it should bring your Zoom back. So that's extra tips for you just to make sure you're a bit more comfortable and you can find your way around Zoom. Okay? I'm going to give you extra tips, and those are, we call them Zoom tips number 2, because during the session today, we may be actually taking you into activities outside of Zoom. So I will be demonstrating some things, and you at some point may want to try this on your own while you're in the session with us. If that's the case, you may need to exit Zoom and go into your browser. If you're not sure how to do that, it can be a bit confusing when you are in Zoom and Zoom in is full screen. So basically it takes the entire screen for you and you can't do anything else. So what you would need to do is basically get rid of or exit the full screen. And there are different ways to do that. On my computer, I will have tiny icons that will allow me to go full screen and small screen, just using the arrows in the top right corner. For others, it could be an option to click on view, and there will be an option to exit full screen. Again, that will allow you to just minimize or make the Zoom window smaller and see other applications on your screen. Now, when we are in screen sharing mode, the way we are right now, you mostly see my slides and some of the participants on the right. That also is a section where you may be in a full screen. In that situation, you may see a green bar that says you're viewing Monika's screen, and next to it, you will see view options. If you click on that, there will be a drop-down menu and exit full screen option again. So all of those will allow you to manage your Zoom as we are in the session today. All right. So I know that Georgina gave you a bit more information about Alpha Plus, but just to give you a bit of overview as well of what we are doing. So our mission is really to help adult education providers understand and adopt digital technology solutions. And we can do it in multiple different ways. So increased learner success is one of the ways we are trying to do that. Enhancing the educational experience is another one. So our session today, for example, and strengthening organizational capacity and performance. And all those can happen in many different ways. One of them is our coaching services. So some of you participating today, I recognize some of your faces. You actually worked with us at Alpha Plus, sometimes with me, sometimes with my colleagues, on our coaching services and support, where we actually meet individually or as a group or a program and work and introduce and talk about technology together. So now, to let you know about our team, you may know them. This may be the first time you're meeting them. We have our executive director, Alan Chervinsky. Then myself, Monika, we have Alithia, Tracy, Ghislaine, and Christine. We are the consultants at Alpha Plus, and you can reach out to any of us for help or support or questions. Alithia and Ghislaine and I are mostly doing coaching, but also our other team members, Tracy and Christine, will do some of the other work. So for example, Tracy will be a bit more work around frameworks and then introducing you to digital practices. And Christine is really very much involved in research. So if you have seen our digital divide report, that's actually Christine working on that. So we do all kinds of different things together. But mainly our goal is to make sure you get more comfortable with technology. And I cannot forget that we do have assistants, either dogs or cats or other pets very often are with us when we are in the sessions with you or when we are working at our desks as well. So on the slides, you do have a screen with my information, my name, my contact information. If you ever need to contact me after the session, you can just use that. You can call me, you can email me, and I will be very happy to help in any way I can. All right. So just very quickly, I know we are just starting. We're trying to refocus from some of the things you have been doing. Sometimes even just joining the session can be a bit complicated. So let's just take a very quick break and use the chat. And if you could let me know if you have heard about our coaching services, it could really be yes or no. I'm actually more interested in the no's than yeses, but all of them will be very helpful. Just to give me a general idea if you actually heard about Alpha Plus and if if there's something that was helpful or not. But mainly if you haven't, that's also great because that tells us that we need to work a bit harder to make sure that everybody knows that we exist and we can help you as well. All right. So I can see amazing feedback here. Fantastic. I can see lots of yeses, and I'm glad that you know about what we do. If you do not, visit our website at alphaplus.ca, ask around. You can sort of learn more about what we do or some of the work we have done with other agencies as well. So this is perfect. I love the feed just coming in with the feedback from you. Perfect. Fantastic. All right. So I'm very mindful of the time and I want to make sure that we jump into our Google Apps and start the introductions and make sure that you get more comfortable with that. Perfect. So if we look at Google Apps, there's so many of them. And before I jump in, I just want to check with our interpreters. Are we okay with the pace? And are we okay with switching between the two of you when it comes to the interpretation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Fantastic. I know it's a bit hard sometimes to keep that in mind, so I don't want to forget about that. Okay, so with Google Apps, I'm going to start with the idea that those are cloud-based applications. And what I mean by that, it's programs or tools that you can access. They are provided by Google. So we have heard about Google products. It's a big list of them. And usually you would access them with one login. So one username and password will give you access to a package of all kinds of different applications. You could be accessing them through a browser, so directly on your laptop or desktop, or through apps on your phone. But usually in both cases, you will be using the same login or multiple logins if you have multiple accounts. And one login will give you access to all those tools and applications. And you will see I have an asterisk next to the browser because if you're using a Firefox browser, if you're using Opera, Edge, whatever else you're using, you could use them to access your Google products. But Chrome browser is sort of developed by Google and is meant to work with your Google applications. So I always suggest that if you're planning on using Google products, use the Chrome browser. Others will work, but occasionally there may be a bit of a glitch. Something may not display the same way. Something may freeze, just because sometimes the browsers are not working as well as the Chrome browser may work with Google Apps. So I always suggest Chrome browser if you can install that. All right. Now, this is the fun part because many of us, especially those who have been in the field, in the technology, and in the world for a while, if I can put it that way, are used to working on laptops and desktops and saving our files and folders into a C drive or H drive directly on our computers. But really what happened over the last 10 or 15 years, we started shifting to saving and working within the cloud. So rather than saving something directly on your computer and then not being able to access it from any other location, what we started doing is we started creating applications and tools where we can log in into something from any device, access it in the cloud, and save it in the cloud. So whether you're using a phone, a laptop, a desktop, all of those allow you to access the apps because they're sitting in the cloud. And I know many of you ask me, what's a cloud? So the easiest way for me to think about that is that a cloud is basically a virtual space. It's something you access through internet or through basically some kind of Wi-Fi internet connection if it's on your phone. But basically you're accessing content that's saved on a different computer in a different location. So imagine you are somewhere in the desert and there's the big factory Inside, a lot of different computers that are processing the data. Sometimes they're called server farms. So really when you're doing it, when you're accessing some of that information from Google, you're really connecting to one of those computers in that building, somewhere in the desert. That's just visual experience for you. And basically accessing the information there, working there, saving content there, accessing it there. But you're doing that by logging into your laptop or desktop, going to internet using your browser, and then signing in into your account that's on that other computer. That's the cloud. That's where you're going. So this is just very sort of visual way, because I cannot see the desert from my house. I can imagine looking into the sky, blue clouds, and it's somewhere there on the other end of the world, right? It's not going to be in one location, really. Most of these providers, when they host something for you, they will have backups in different locations to make sure you don't lose your data. But the concept is the same. You are connecting to something that is not on your computer anymore. It actually is somewhere out there, and you're connecting to it through the internet. So I hope that this helps and makes it a bit more fun to imagine your cloud services with the blue sky. If you're doing it over the phone, it's the same idea. Your phone, either through what Wi-Fi network or the data plan you have, connects through the application to those servers somewhere else and accesses your information and displays it very quickly on your screen. So it's a big shift. And we have seen that specifically during COVID, because some organizations still were saving content directly on the desktop. If you couldn't go to the office anymore, you couldn't access this information. So many organizations had to very, very quickly switch to put some of that content online so we can access it from any location, specifically home sometimes as well. Okay? So I hope that this helps, because if we understand that, it's a bit easier for us to now imagine how we are working with all those applications. And on this window, what I really want to clarify is that we may be used or using both types of services. We may be using some applications from Microsoft, like Outlook, PowerPoint, Word, and we may be using some applications from Google. When you think about Microsoft products, in the past, again, many of them were just installed on our devices, laptop, desktop. You worked on that, it got saved on your computer, and you were done. Now what really happens, Microsoft has its own cloud version, Office 365, where it's connecting to the cloud, you can access it and link to all the content you are saving. Google is just basically a separate package from a different provider that has similar functionality and different programs and applications for you to use. And in our field, what we have seen a lot is that a lot of programs will be using a bit of both. Some programs are in the process of switching. Some programs are deciding to use both as they work with the learners and with each other. There is no wrong answer. So the main idea for all of us is to get comfortable and familiar with both so we can navigate and switch as needed. Just a quick note, at Alpha Plus, for example, we still use Outlook for our emails. So we process it that way. And then we use a lot of the Google Workspace, like Google Drive, Google Docs, and file sharing as a team. So we are mixing as well. Any questions, please put them in the chat as well. All right, so now that we talked about the cloud and we know we can access everything on this other computer somewhere else, this is a short list of Google applications you can really access, a very short list. And today, we are just going to take a look at Drive and Docs very, very briefly. But you can see there are many of them. I'm not saying you have to learn and use all of them. What's really the best option is to try with a few. And as you get comfortable, you start adding others to your group of tools that you're using. And some of them you may be using without realizing you're using them. For example, if you are using Android phones, you may have been using Google Maps to access different locations when you're traveling. You may be using Gmail or another application for email to access your email. So you may already be mixing and using a lot of those applications. Okay? So one account login, I mentioned that earlier, and each account will come with multiple apps. That's a lot to take in. So what I just wanted to clarify is the differences between the different types of accounts. This is the part where we get mixed up a lot and confused a lot. So let me just quickly clarify. If you have a Gmail account, so you just went to Google and set up a Gmail account, it very often will end with gmail.com. So really what happens is Google basically gives you an account with all those applications included in it. If you have 2 Gmail accounts, you have 2 packages of applications. So you will have 2 Google Drives, 2 Google Docs, and so on. So each of the accounts has its own package of apps with it. So it can gets very confusing when you're switching between them and navigating as well. So that's the regular personal accounts. We call them personal because you usually would use them for your home email. Sometimes you may set it up to use for your organization, but it still comes with a Gmail extension. What that really means is that Gmail or Google hosts it for you and administers everything for you, giving you access to all the apps they can give you access to. All right. Now, there's also organizational accounts, and I will specify a bit later how you can get those. But the idea is that for nonprofit organizations, specifically like ours, we can apply to Google and say, we are a nonprofit organization, here's our nonprofit number, and Google will come back and give us the whole package of Google applications for free. There's also Google for Business, where corporations can go and get that package from Google, but they will have to pay around $50 per user. So we are getting it for free because we are proving we are a nonprofit organization. So in those cases, if Google gives you this package to your organization, in the past, it was called Google Suite. Now it's called Google Workspace. But the idea is that you get the package with all the apps and administrative panel that allows you to issue emails to your staff and manage what staff can do with those accounts. For example, as administrator at Alpha Plus, my manager can say, Monika can use Google Drive, Google Docs, but I don't want her to go to YouTube, so I'm going to disable YouTube from her access. Administrators in those accounts can control what you have access to. They also can control permissions for you, access to specific folders or no access to specific folders. Administrators can do that. On the regular Gmail account, because you're the owner and you have access to everything, in a way, you are the administrator and have access to everything right away. So there is a difference between those two accounts. And notice, Monika at alphaplus.ca includes Alpha Plus domain, that second part of the address, because when we applied for Google for Nonprofits, we told the system that this is the domain we want to use. So for you, you may not even know that we are using Google products, but in the back end, we are using them. Okay? So understanding the specific accounts is really, really important. And if you want more information on how to apply for Google Workspace, you can do that by going to TechSoup. There's a link in our slides. You will be able to read a bit more on how to apply. If you need help with applying or switching, let us know. It's a bit difficult process, if I can call it that way. There's multiple stages for that. So if you need help, let us know and we'll be happy to help you with that as well. So I thought I'm going to quickly ask you if you can tell me how many Google accounts do you have? And for that, I'm going to try to launch a poll. So just give me 1 second so I can get my tools going. And let's see if you will be able to see that. So that should show up on your screen and you should be able to click on the poll and answer the questions. Now, I apologize. If you're using a phone or tablet, the poll may not show up for you. It also may not show up for Chromebook users. So it's one of those things with Zoom. But if you're not seeing the poll, feel free to use the chat to let us know how many Google accounts you have. We'll take a few minutes just to see who is doing and who is using what. All right, I have 2. I can see 2. Perfect. All right. What's interesting with the personal accounts is that if you use YouTube, for example, if you have a YouTube channel or if you just watch YouTube accounts or if you want to follow somebody, again, you will be using that personal Google account for that as well. And because YouTube is one of those apps that comes with each Google account, if you have 2 Gmail accounts, you have 2 YouTube accounts. If you have 5 email accounts, you have 5 YouTube accounts. So that can get very confusing. All right. Okay. So perfect. Almost everybody participated. I'm just going to give you 1 more second to wrap up, and then I'm going to share the results with you. So if I end the poll and share the results with you, you will be able to see Here we go. Here are the results. So I just need a note from some of you. Can you see the poll results on your screen? Yes, perfect. All right. So how many Google accounts do you have? Personal Gmail account, 23 or 38%. Organizational Gmail only, address ends with gmail.com. Some of you, I have seen some instructors create those accounts just for the work purposes as well. Then we have personal and organizational Gmail accounts, so at least 2 in that case. And then personal Gmail that ends with Gmail, and then organizational that has a business domain. So this one is interesting. That means that 14 organizations or 14 of you are actually using accounts where there is a Google Workspace or some kind of Google package set up for your organization. So that's really good to know. And then many of you said more than I can count. Those are always very, very tricky. When using Google products and testing and everything, we may be setting up so many of those accounts. And just as a fun trick, I was trying to count how many I actually have, just as a quick snapshot. I counted 22, which is sometimes crazy. And then you have to know to switch between them. So it is always, always important to check which account you're in before you do anything with Google products, okay? If you come out away from this session, one thing, check which account you're in. That will be very, very important. Okay, thank you so much for sharing your information. This is very helpful for me to also get the idea of how do you use and what do you do with those tools. Okay, so now let's go into accessing the tools. So again, I said at the beginning, we are going to go slow and then try to clarify a few things. That's where I'm kind of going in and giving you a bit of a review from the basics. And one of the simplest way for many of you, especially if you're using desktop, laptop, or Chromebook, is to basically go into your Gmail account, because many of you may have personal Gmail accounts or those emails with gmail.com. Go to your Gmail account, and in the top right corner, you're going to see something we call waffle menu, if that's easier, because it looks like a small waffle. But it's basically a list of Google apps that you have access to. So if you see your name next to it, or just the tiny icon next to you, you will see Google Apps. Click on it. It will give you a drop-down menu, and that's when you will be able to see the different Google apps you have access to. So Google Apps, Google Programs, small programs that you can use, small tools you can use created by Google. Now, on mine, you will see I have Drive, Gmail, and Sites. Those are the ones that I actually use a lot. That's why they're close to the top. But if you go to yours and use the same process, you will also see that you can reorganize those. So you can actually decide which one will be first, second, and third, and so on, based on your preference. So you can group them in the way that works for you. Now, you will also see that next to my face, you will see Alpha Plus logo. And that basically, right away for me and anybody else who is using organizational accounts, tells me I'm in the organizational account. Google Workspace belongs to Alpha Plus, and here's my profile picture. If you do not have profile pictures set up, I strongly suggest that you set them up, because it will make it easier for you to differentiate between your accounts. Otherwise, you may have 3 or 4 accounts with a small M for Monika on them, and then maybe a slightly different color. So then you're not really clear which account you're using, and it can get very confusing. Okay? All right. So now that we know that, another way to access our applications is to go to the address bar all the way on top of your window in the browser, and just type in the address of the application you're trying to access. So if you are going to Google Drive, you will just type in drive.google.com. All right. Now, I want to be very clear. You're not typing it in the Google search bar. No, no, no. You're typing it all the way in the top left corner where you see the address bar, where you usually will have your URL. There will be tiny lock next to it and so on. That's where you're typing it. And you can switch the different apps. So if you want to access Google Drive, it will be drive.google.com. If you want to access Docs, docs.google.com. Meet, meet.google.com, and so on. They created those shortcuts to make things a bit easier. All right. So what's important as well is if you use mobile devices, you may have to install your application. So Android phones will often have Google products pre-installed because you're going through the Google account on your phone. But if you're using iPhone, you may need to go and install those as well. But you can, And with the same Gmail account or username and password, you can log into those and they will be syncing between each other. So for example, if you create something on your computer and save in your Google Drive, and then you go to your phone and you log into your Google Drive, you will see the file because they're talking each other, they're syncing with each other. All right. So I'm going to pause for a second and just let you think about the Gmail account. I mentioned Gmail account as sort of the first places you can go to access your apps. But I really want to highlight that not everybody is actually using Gmail. So Gmail itself is something that many of us are familiar with. And we often even suggest to our students that if you don't have an email account, just go and set up a Gmail account. It's a fantastic tool. It gives you access to email, quickly correspondence. It's free, lots of storage capacity, and it comes with all those apps I mentioned. But what really is important is to know that some organizations actually do not use Gmail. And I'm going to be a bit more specific. So for Alpha Plus, for example, we are using Google Workspace. And when we were deciding how we are going to process our email versus other applications, we said we have been using Outlook for years. We are familiar with it. So we will continue using Outlook for our email. So in the back end, organizational accounts, what they can do, they can change the setting and basically tell the system that's processing the email not to send email to Gmail, but to send it to Outlook. And then everything else outside of Gmail, like the Docs, Google Drive, and other applications, I can still access with my email account. We do that at Alpha Plus, and many other organizations sometimes set it up. So if on your end, you have Google Workspace or organizational account, and you're going to gmail.com and it doesn't want to load, or it goes in but it's empty, that very likely means that your organization, your administrator, is not sending email through Gmail, they're sending it through some other application. And that's why you're not seeing your emails. And that's why it's important to know that if your Gmail doesn't work, or you can't even load the Gmail link, you can always go to drive.google.com, docs.google.com, and still access your applications that are available to you. So it's good to know and good to remember as well. All right. So I did mention it could be a mix. And as I said, even with Alpha Plus, this is the setup we have. When we process everything, we basically use Outlook for our email. We do not use Gmail that we have, even though we have it as part of our package. And then we use all the other applications. Other organizations choose to stop using Outlook and start processing everything through their Google applications as well. So it could be very different for each and every one of you. But if you understand that, if you're clear a bit more on that, it helps to understand why sometimes things work or don't work the way you expect them to. Okay? So we are going to get into Google Drive. Again, that's going to be a very quick overview of it. But the idea is that Google Drive is a container. It's like a storage. And I don't know if this is a good picture for you. I think of it as a bucket. It's a bucket that can contain a lot of different things. First of all, it can include files and folders that I create. It can also give me access to many of the Google apps like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Forms. I will find them when I go to my Google Drive. It also allows me to upload content to it, and almost like a virtual USB stick where I can take Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, PDF documents, videos, pictures. I can pull all that into my Google Drive and use it as a container. So again, if my laptop dies, I cannot access anything here, I can just go to a desktop, go to a library, go to another computer, sign in into my Google account, and all of a sudden, all this content that I have in Google Drive is still there. I did not lose it. Because remember, I said it's not on your computer, it's somewhere on a server. It's only being displayed on your computer for you to quickly access it. Okay? Feel free to ask questions if that doesn't make any sense. Now, one thing I should also mention is that all the emails that are coming into your Gmail account, if you do use Gmail, for example, you may have somebody that just sent you 5 videos about something. Videos can be big in size. So if they're sending you big files and big attachments, very often you may not realize that those files and attachments count against your space in your Google Drive. And Google Drive that is personal, that comes with a regular Gmail account, can have around 15 gigabytes. But the organizational one will have around 30. And then there's other folders you can use. But if you're noticing that your storage space is getting small, it may be because there's a lot of content in your email. And if you're noticing that, that may be one way to clean up the storage is to delete some of the older emails you may not be using anymore. Okay, so Outlook email doesn't count against drive space because Outlook is from Microsoft. So Outlook basically is OneDrive, which is a totally separate storage system. Google is separate and basically is not really linked in any way to each other. That's a question from Judy in our chat. So I just wanted to clarify that. All right, but feel free to ask more questions. All right, so again, a very quick reminder, because this is the most important part. If you get that, if you get the cloud, if you understand how you access those things, everything else you will slowly get used to and comfortable with. So a quick reminder, your desktops, laptops, Chromebooks, you use your browsers to access the content that's in the cloud. That's where it's mostly saved. If you're using mobile devices, you install the apps and you also go to the same cloud. And all the content between the devices is syncing. All right, so I really hope that is a bit more clear for everyone. Okay, so the Google Drive app or program that we're looking at is very, very specific. So here, what I hope to do is really to give you a very, very quick overview and a demonstration of how I can go into the Drive and create a folder. So I'm going to take it slow just to make sure that our interpreters are taking the time to try to interpret as well. But what I'm going to do is I'll try to go live and take you to my Google Drive and just give you a few tips. Now, if you have the PowerPoint, you will see I will try to recreate or use the same features so you can follow me and you can repeat some of that after we have the session if you need to practice. So bear with me. I'm going to exit my full screen. And when I do that, what you should be able to see is that I open a new browser, and I can open a new browser by clicking on a plus symbol. So if I click on that, you will see that I can go to the address bar. Remember, I said address bar when you are putting it in. So I'm not putting it in here. This is Google search, never here. You want to go all the way to the top. And I can put in drive.google.com. The system remembers already what I have accessed before. So it's pre-filling this for me. I can hit enter and it's going to take me directly into my Google Drive. So even though I see this on my computer, this content is not on my computer. It's actually on a separate server in the cloud, all right? And this is the interface I'm using to access it, okay? So if we clarify some of those things, here's a few extra features that we are going to look at. You will see My Drive and you will see shared drives. If I switch between them, they will be different. Here's the difference. If you are using regular Gmail account, you will not have a shared drive. Shared drive only comes for organizations if they have the Google Workspace, the organizational account. And the idea behind shared drive is that we can have specific folders, if you think of them that way, where we can collaborate on different projects. And for us, we are naming it in a specific way. Your organization may be using it in a very different way. For us, we have some external folders, internal folders, some communications, we have some HR. All of those are shared drives that some of us have access to. So if I see it, I have access to it. But if I don't see it, that means there are other ones somewhere that other users are using, but I just don't have access to them. So shared drives are almost like team drives that I can use and work with my team. But again, only for organizational accounts. Regular Gmail users will mostly just see My Drive. And My Drive is almost like a personal folder. When you think of that, you can think of like if you had the desktop tower with the CD drive in it, that was a drive. You can think of it that My Drive is one drive and the shared drive is a second drive next to it. They have two separate purposes for each other, okay? So it's always good to remember. And over time, as you practice and use those tools, you kind of develop your own system on how you can do that. Now, there are other sections here. So the other one I just want to very quickly highlight is shared with me. That's when somebody else shares the file with you. So if they share a file or folder by email, they could send you an invitation. You will be able to see all that with shared with me. So if I clicked on that, I will see all the files and folders that somebody else shared with me, and they got added as a shortcut for me to preview them in Shared With Me. It's just a place to keep those. If I don't forget, I don't remember the name or where I saved it, I can go to Shared With Me and find it. Another section that I want to quickly take a look at is Search Drive. So if I search for anything here, I can just put in the word and search, and the system will start looking for people that I'm working with, the names of the files, and so on. Very, very robust search engine. I love it. If I get lost, if I'm looking for a specific file, it doesn't only look for the name of the file, it searches the body of the actual document as well. So it makes it easier to find things. Then there is Quick Access section. The Quick Access shows you 5 last documents that you worked on. So you can see I was working on a presentation for today, so it's showing it there for me. So I can very, very quickly click on it and access it as well, all right? If you look to the bottom, you will see different folders, and if I scroll, I will see also files underneath. So the system will usually basically organize everything. And I can see that some of you are asking, how would you delete? So if it was just a document, I can right click on any of those, and there's an option to remove. You can remove files and you can remove folders as well. So that's in My Drive. If you're in a shared drive that your organization set up, you have to remember, administrator sets the rules. So the administrator may say, you have access to the shared drives, but you cannot delete, because you could accidentally delete team files. So the administrator can actually control that in the shared drives as well. So very good questions that are coming in. I'm trying to keep an eye on that. So now that we see that I have all those files and folders that I can access, and I have a lot because I use it a lot. Now, if you don't like this view, in the top right corner here, there's this grid view. If I click on that, I can switch and see files and folders in a slightly different look, almost like with the preview. So I can see previews of my documents. It's just a preference, which way you may like the most. I myself like the list view because then I can see the file names and I can quickly distinguish if it's a file or folder, or even what type of file it is. Because if I scroll down, Word documents, notebook, docs, Word, those tiny icons are helping me understand what am I looking at, what type of file am I looking at as well. So that's a very, very quick overview of Google Drive, just of how it looks. What I want to do next is give you an example. So when we come to the top of our Google Drive, the very big button there is something called New. If I click on it, it's going to tell me, do you want to create a new folder, file upload, folder upload, or create specific documents or sheets or slides or forms? All that is almost like a shortcut for me to quickly access. So in this case, I'm just going to say folder, click on it, and I'm going to call it test, just like that. So what the system will do, it's going to create a folder called test, and it's going to open it for me. So you just give it a few minutes. It shows me that it puts it in the list under folder. If I open it, the folder is there and it's empty because I haven't put anything in it. But if you look to the top, this is something called breadcrumb, and it tells me you're in My Drive and you create a folder called test. Okay, it's empty in there. What I can do next is I can bring files and folders into it. So I can click New again because I'm bringing something new to this folder, and I'm going to say I'm going to upload the file into this folder right here. File upload. Look for the documents that you have on your computer. I'm just going to take the latest one I have, put it in there, and the system is just going to take a few seconds and upload it. So remember I said this is a server or a computer somewhere else. The upload function is basically to take something that's sitting and is saved on my computer and save it into the cloud on that other computer somewhere else. That's why we are uploading files in there. Okay, so now I have it. If I wanted to share it, I can share the entire folder or I can share the document on its own. To share it, I can just click on the drop-down menu right next to the word test, and it's going to give me all kinds of things I can do. One of them is share or get link. Either one will take me to the same window. So I'm just going to say share. It's going to go open a window and allow me to share with people by their email address. So I could say, I'm going to share this document with Ambreen. The system is going to look for her name. There's Ambreen right here. I can select her name, And the system is going to say, okay, you're going to send this to Ambreen. Do you want Ambreen to be editor or viewer of this file? I'm going to say editor, but basically I can choose to give Ambreen permissions to do anything she wants with this folder, or I can just tell her viewer. So if I tell a viewer, she will be able to see the folder and the content within it, but she won't be able to make changes to it because she's a viewer only. So I can create that. I can also add a message and send it to her. She will receive an email telling her that I have shared this file with her. I'm going to click send, even without the message. It's going to tell me you're sharing it outside of your organization because Ambreen is not part of Alpha Plus. Ambreen works for MTML. So that's okay, share anyway. And now my folder is going to be shareable. So if I click one more time on this shared icon, for example, now it's going to tell me you are the owner, but you also gave Ambreen permissions to edit this document. So if you're working with other users, if you're working with coordinators, you can do that as well. So I can see Sonia has raised her hand. Sonia, go ahead. Just make sure to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm just looking at what you were just doing there with the comment and viewer, and then making some of the edits. And so I have students right now who I would be sending things to because of COVID. And so I send them the link, and if there's another student that's already made, I had sent a link to students and then didn't realize that students were actually editing in that link instead of like saving it and putting things elsewhere. So I'm not sure what would be a good method to share something with students that I want them to be able to edit, but individually and privately. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, that's a very good comment and question. I think it's going to be great for everybody to know. So if you want individual students to have permissions to edit, then what I would suggest you add their email addresses, the ones they would be using to be able to edit the document in this section. That basically will mean that only those individuals can make changes. What you're suggesting and what you did is very likely you came here, you went to the link option, and in the link you said anyone with the link can either view or edit, and very likely you said edit. So basically you gave a link to anyone who has that link and permission to give them to edit the document. So that's what you did. So basically I would go back and change editor to viewer and then give them individual rights to work on the document, and only to those that you want to edit, not everyone. Make sense?
Just hold on one moment while we finish the interpretation.
All right.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yes. So here is the, I'm just really in the meantime, perfect, thank you. And in the meantime, I'm just looking at the chat and some of the questions here. So the chat asks, can you share the entire folder with people outside? Yes, if you want them to view anyone, I'm getting spam, so my phone is ringing, of course. If you want to share a folder with anyone in the world, they do not have to have a Gmail account. You can, assuming they will only be viewing. So slides, presentations, documents, they will be able to view them. If you want them to edit, then they have to have a Gmail account because they have to have the application to be able to make changes in a way. So then it becomes a bit more complicated. Sometimes there is an option to take a Google Doc and then say, I'm going to share it by link with editing rights. In that specific situation, they do not even have to have a Gmail account because you open it up to anyone to edit. So you're giving their own kind of documents where they can work on that. But most of the time, you can share with people by viewing, by giving them access to specific file, but folders and editing, they will start to have Gmail accounts. So it may be a bit confusing, but the idea is that depending on what you want to do, if it's a singular file, people can be accessing it, viewing it, editing it without even having a Gmail account. If it's folders and you want to give them editing rights, the system will tell them you have to be signed in because you have to have permissions to work on those things as well. All right. So I hope that helped. And I'm really glad to see that some of you are helping with the feedback and notes. Okay, when COVID restrictions are over. Okay, perfect. So if I miss your feedback, I really apologize if I may not see all of them, but I will try to review the chat after the session. And if I miss anything, I will bring it up in the next session, or I'll try to follow up with some of you separately. So if you're a viewer, yes, Mary had a question. If you're a viewer, can you comment? No, the viewer is really only that you have access to the file. So for example, for our 3 sessions, I could give you access to a folder with the slides in them, and then you can view them, but you cannot really comment or do anything unless I actually make you a commenter. So the commenter will be, you can view and comment. Viewer only view, and editor, you can do anything with it. So those permissions will work on folder level. You will see the share and get link here, and they will work on the document level as well. So if I right click on the PDF, just right click on it, I will also have that option. So the difference is I can share a folder that way, or I can share a file that way. So I really hope that makes a difference. If I wanted to share this file with you, I can go get link, because I'm going to give access to everybody right away, very quickly, rather than individuals. I can say anyone with the link can view, and I'm going to copy this link, click done, put it in our chat, and you will see you should be able to view this document. It's just one of the examples, so it's not perfect, but if I put it in the chat, you will be able to see that document without you having to sign in or do anything, because I gave you viewing rights only, so you can go and see that. If it was a folder, it will be a folder you will be able to see as well. All right. So I hope that gave you some good understanding of how the drive will work. And we looked at the copy of that. I'm just checking what am I missing. The last thing I wanted to show you here is if I right click on that specific file, I can also add a shortcut. So it's a feature that not everybody really understands, but add shortcut to drive basically means Monika is the owner of this document, or this folder is sitting under my drive. I can add a shortcut to it from a different location. So if I wanted to refer to this document because I have projects, and under projects, I also wanted to see this folder. So I want to have this document in test, and in another folder called projects, I can basically say, create a shortcut. So it will be one file accessed from different locations. And the purpose for that is that I do not have duplicate copies. And by accident, I'm not editing the document in one place, but not the other. By creating a shortcut, I will access the same document all the time from different locations. And it can be more than 2. So I could have it in test, I could have it in projects, I could have it somewhere else as well. The main idea, the original sits in one of them, and everything else is a quick shortcut to the original to view it and access it and edit it. Yes. So Kathy, you were asking, if I create a document in Word, can it be saved to the Google Drive, and how? Basically, what you will do is you will click New, and you will upload it to your Google Drive. Now, I do not know if I have docs right in my computer, but let me just quickly check. I'm going to look for doc files. Yes, I have a few. So this may not be the best one, but basically any document that will be a Google Doc, I can select and I can open. So really what happens is you're uploading your Word document directly into your drive. The system will take it, notice the icon, it's a W. If I click on it, the system is going to basically tell me, this is a Word document, I'm going to open it for you in Google Docs, or sometimes it may even ask you. So this is just a draft, don't worry what's inside, but right over there, when I opened it, it converted that and opened that in Docs. It still tells me it's a doc file, but I'm opening it in Google Docs so I can read it, I can edit it and update it, okay? One more thing for that, because we are kind of wrapping up our time, it's 3:30. We're going until 4, so we have half an hour, but there's other things I want to do. So if I wanted to take this document, I'm in it right now, and I look at the title, right next to it is this folder, right here. If I click on it, I can move it. So right now it's sitting in test. That's the folder I created for testing with you today, next to the other PDF document, but I can use the arrows to move it back somewhere else. I can say, oh no, I want it to be in this folder. I'm going to move it. So it's going to change permissions and things like that. So now if I go back to my test folder and refresh, you will see the Word document disappeared because I moved it to a different folder. So I can move files back and forth, reorganize them, drag them, drop them. There's so many different ways in which you can do that. I know the first time you're doing it and you're just watching me do that, it can be confusing. My first suggestion for you, on your slides, you will see you have a lot of step-by-step instructions, specifically for Google Drive and for Google Docs for today. When you have a chance after this session, go to your own Drive, sign in, follow the instructions, how to create a folder, how to upload something, and follow the steps. That's the best practice, because you will be seeing how it works. And then you may have more questions. You can reach back to me and play with that. Is that okay with everyone? All right. I'm going to pause and ask if there are any questions now. And if there are, please do the chat, because I may not see you. Or I think if you raise your hand, then I will see the icon as well. So I just want to make sure that I don't miss anybody. I can see thumbs up from some of you. That's perfect. But if you do have questions, let me know, post them in the chat, and I'll do everything I can to answer your questions.
Monica,
Yes.
Kathy just put forward a question. If I create a document in Word, can it be saved to the Google Drive? How?
Yes. So basically that I just showed that. So you create a the Word document on your computer and you upload it into your Google Drive by clicking New and File Upload. Okay. So one more time, just to repeat, I'll click File Upload. I will look for any document that will be a doc. In this case, the system is just giving me some templates that I had on my computer. I select it, click on it, open, and it will upload it into my Google Drive. So I hope that helps with the question. Okay. Okay. I'm just very quickly going to check. Thanks. How do you save? How do you save? That's a really good question. How do you save in Google Drive? This is the beautiful thing about Google Drive, especially for new learners who are just learning. There's no save button on Google Drive. The system saves everything automatically, which is just beautiful in a way when you think about that. I can start a document. If I accidentally closed it, it will still be there. So let me show you. If I click New and then create a Google Doc, we will be jumping to that fairly soon, but I'm just going to click on it now. It's going to open a Google Doc for me. It's going to be empty, and we will be going through some of those features very soon. Notice it says Untitled Document. So I started, and I can just put text, whatever I want in it. And now I got distracted, or my system crashed, and my document disappeared. The system will save it in your Google Drive under Untitled Document. And you can go back and find it and continue working with it. Very often, what will also happen, and let's see if it's going to work in here. If I'm going to go to my Drive and refresh this, sometimes the system will put that latest document as one of the latest documents you have worked at under quick access. So that's another way. See how it's right here? The system basically says, well, the last document you opened was this document. Even though you didn't hit save, we saved it for you. Here is a quick access to it. So this is a very, very nice tool for new learners who are forgetting. For the system to crash, the system saves it. There's no save button. Also, if I go back to this document that I just created, you will see it says last edit was seconds ago. What basically happens, the system saves the information for you, but also keeps history. So if I go back to the document over and over and make changes, this will continue saving and telling me this is your latest version, this is the other version. I can even revert back to the previous version. So the system is taking snapshots and saving your document every few seconds or minutes, and then basically telling you, this is what you did in this one, this is what you did in the other one. If somebody else came here and made changes, it will also say that now Ambreen came in and make changes to this document. The system keeps track of all that for you. Okay, so to access that, what I did, I just clicked on the last edit, and that will allow me to open the history of this document. Okay, so I hope that helps. Lots of good questions. Okay, well, lots of questions coming in here. This is perfect. And if I don't get to them today, I will make sure that we come back to them next time. How do you move files from my Facilitator drive to our Workspace drive? So Amanda, just remind me to ask, is it two separate accounts or is it the same organization account? I will just need to know a bit more information. If you will have time to stay after the session today, I'll try to clarify that in more detail because I need to know exactly your setup first, okay? And then undo work the same way as undo on our mistakes. Yes, there is a bit of undo. So I can undo the button and you can see it's going to kind of go back. And then basically step by step, I can undo the entire thing. So there's undo and redo, and it will help you as well. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So Judy is asking, this is lots of good questions. I'm going to take one more minute to clarify that. And then we are going to jump into hopefully a discussion for you, so you can actually share with each other how you could be using Google Drive or how you may be using it now already. So Judy says, I downloaded the presentation today to my computer, let's say to the desktop, so I can access it in the future. But when I went to my Google Drive, it actually showed up in my shared with me folder. Why? So if you remember, I mentioned if anyone shares anything with you, it will go to shared with me. So for me, it will show me all the files and documents that somebody else shared with me. So Judy, what happened for you is because I potentially emailed it to your work account or Gmail account, the system automatically said, oh, this is a Google product, so I'm going to put it in shared with me so you can access it later. That's why it's showing there for you. Okay. All right. The saving feature, fantastic. Deb, yes, the saving feature is awesome. Protection, nothing specific on a specific app, but making sure privacy is kept. There is a lot of discussions about privacy and using cloud services and Google Apps or Office 365. There's that shift to using content that way. So more and more programs are navigating to using cloud services. Some want to be a bit more specific than others. Some work with students directly because students have their own Gmail accounts and they're collaborating together. When it comes to personal information, some organizations still keep that off Google Drive. Others are very comfortable putting it there. There's a lot of security features and so on, but it is online service that at any point can be, can crash or hack, just the same way your own server could be crashed or hacked as well. So there's a lot of things to consider for sure. Okay. Okay, do we have access to editing tools in Google Doc, like a pen, draw? Yes, some of them are slightly different than in Word. Some of them are very similar. So we will be moving to Docs very, very soon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold off with the chat, just kind of keep an eye on it, keep those coming. But what I really would like to do next is to basically take you into very, very quick breakout rooms. And what I mean by that is kind of figure out if you would like to share some of your feedback or experiences on how you're using Google Drive, okay? So I want to take you to the breakout rooms. And if you are using interpreting services, when we launch the breakout rooms, my suggestion is just do not go anywhere. Stay where you are, do not click on breakout rooms. For everybody else, what I'm going to do, I'm just randomly going to create a number of breakout rooms. I'm going to invite you to go into those breakout rooms, and I'm going to ask you to take 5 minutes to discuss with each other how you could be using Google Drive or how you already are using Drive, and provide tips for others as well, okay? So I'm going to switch back to our slides. So bear with me for 1 second. I just want to jump into the section where I have the questions for you. I want to make sure, here we go. So in the breakout room, what I hope you will be able to do is basically chat and really chat. How do you use your Google Drive? What works, what doesn't? Just have that conversation to share some of the ideas and resources. I can see some of you already started doing that in the chat, but I will try and see if we can do the breakout rooms together. I know sometimes the system may be a bit tricky, but let's see if that's going to work. So bear with me for 1 second. Very, very quickly need to create my breakout rooms. Around 60 participants. So if I do 10, that's 6 per person. Yes, I'm going to create 11 breakout rooms, and it's going to be assigned automatically. So you will be just put into a breakout room. So hopefully you will have a few people to talk to and share. And as I said, if you need interpreting services, I'm going to make sure that our ASL interpreters are with us in the main room. Now, for any of you, if you accidentally are taken into the breakout room, even the interpreters, please just come back to the main room. So that's where we can have the interpreters communicate and share some of the feedback for that specific group as well. So please bear with me. I hope I'm not going to mess this up. Okay. I'm going to open the breakout rooms for you. And the idea is you have to join the breakout rooms. So when you look at your Zoom tools at the bottom, there should be a button that says breakout rooms. Just click on that. It will take you to your breakout rooms. I'm going to close the breakout rooms in around 5 minutes. So you will be brought back to me if something happens, okay? So just go off and see if you have participants in your room and chat with each other, okay? Okay, all right. Okay, and let's just give it a few more minutes. So everybody who wants to join a breakout room can go into a breakout room, hopefully at least 2 participants in a room. So that's going to be perfect. All right. And if you're staying with me in the main room, I suspect that it's because you need the interpreting services, or you may be on a mobile device like a tablet or a phone, and you do not have an option to go to the breakout room, or you don't know how. So what I think we are going to do is basically stay here and let's chat with each other. I can see that there's around 10 or 15 of us here right now. So let's take that 5 minutes. I'm just going to set the timer. And if anybody wants to volunteer to be the first one to say, are you using Google Drive now and how are you using it? Just a few seconds to share your experience. Any volunteers? Simone, maybe if you want to go first, is that okay? Yeah, okay.
Sure. I don't mind going first.
Okay.
I use Google Drive. I've used it for a little while. Just one moment. Sometimes when I'm working with students, I'll use it, but I kind of come back and forth to using it consistently.
Okay.
And so every time I feel like I'm starting again from scratch because I forget a little bit of how I had gotten used to it the last time. But then as I get going, I'm like, oh yes, I remember how to do this now.
Yes.
And as I try the different functions, then it gets more and more comfortable. And, a lot of it is repetition of moving things in different spots, like documents and stuff. And I never want my documents or anything to be lost if something were to happen to my laptop. And so I do try and move them my files and such consistently into my Google Drive. But it takes a bit of practice to get used to using that technology.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a bit confusing sometimes, but it's part of the process. But yeah.
Yeah. Like with many other tools, right? We are introduced to new tools, and it's that a learning experience. Learning from mistakes works the best sometimes, if we can think of it that way. Perfect. Okay, anybody else that may want to share? Thinking about using Google Drive or using it very successfully?
Oh, also before I would use Google Drive sometimes, but then I would stop for a little while and use it again, but then stop for a while. And so part of it is just the relearning process each time.
Yes.
But overall, it's a good experience.
Awesome. Sonia, what about you?
Well, I love Google. It is my best friend, so to speak. And I notice sometimes there's some glitches, but even with Google Classroom, we use Google Doc, Google Slides, Google Forms for questionnaires and different things as well.
Yes.
And so when people are able to fill out the answers for some forms, then it automatically becomes a document, and we're able to see those results. And students are able to see some of the answers if they got the right answer and that sort of thing. It helps with marking. And one moment, the interpreter is just getting some clarification. Oh, it helps with the viewer mode as well for students to be able to take a look at documents that way.
Perfect. I'm so glad that you're showing that and you're using Classroom and other applications. Shifting to the online environments is never easy, right? And we kind of knew that the learners are starting to use some of the products, but when it actually comes to using it, it's still such a learning experience for all of us as we are adapting to it as well, right? All right. Anybody else that wants to speak up? You can feel free to unmute yourself, and if you can, let me know. Everybody else is a bit quiet. Should I call out on your name? Magda, what about you? Are you using Google products and how are you using them? Let's see if Magda can hear me. All right. Nope. Anybody else? Angel, Shelly, Lori? I know the muting is a bit weird here. All right. So if you, over the next week or two, had to use Google Drive or were thinking about using Google Drive, is there any specific way in which you think you may be using it or do something else with it? Anyone? Okay.
For me, this is Sonia. I can, keep various folders, and it makes it really easy to transfer information and see all of the files that are in a folder and easily send them to other people. Is that the kind of thing that you mean?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And then Simone?
I would use it frequently for PowerPoint and separating for different groups.
Okay.
Or different subjects. So if there's, English, beginner level, and then more advanced level, and just being able to group different PowerPoints for different groups, then that makes it easier and a lot more organized, a bit less confusing.
Perfect. Yes. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you sharing and discussing that in a bit more detail. I closed the breakout room. Some of the participants joined back right away. So I'm glad that everybody's coming back. Please use the chat now to see if there is anything that you would like to share or give feedback to others in terms of maybe you learned something new or something interesting from somebody, or at least you got a bit more encouraged to try using it on your own because somebody else is already using it. And then that sounds like a great idea maybe. So use the chat and we're going to wait just a few more seconds to have everybody to kind of join us back and participate again. Okay. All right. So for some of you who are just joining us, we had a small group here that was sharing a bit, but I know some of you went into the other breakout rooms. What I really want to encourage you to do is just to think about how you could be using Google Drive or accessing those cloud services, not only for yourself and your team, but also for your learners potentially on how you could be collaborating them, how you could make some of those things easier. And if there was something interesting you learned from somebody in the breakout room, something that was exciting, something that sparked a bit of a new idea for you, use the chat to share it either with me or everybody else in the room. I always say seeing how other people organize things, use tools in a different way is very, very helpful. So I know this is more tech-driven session for us today, but I really hope that just that conversation of this is what I do with it, this is how I think I can use it in the future will be a bit more helpful for you. So don't be shy, post in the chat or share now. Go ahead.
Monica, so in our group, there was a comment that somebody asked that if there was an extension in Google where they could use a pen. So because they're with the school board or their students, do something on a doc and she wants to do corrections. So how she requires a pen. How do you do that?
Okay. So that's a very good one. We are going to go fairly quickly into Google Docs. There is no pen per se on Google Docs because you're thinking of drawing on a document and that gets a bit complicated. But in Google Docs, there is an option to leave comments or even adding something and provide suggestions. So that's a way around when you're working with a document and sharing a document with someone. So we are going to go through that fairly quickly now. I'm going to show you what I mean by that, and hopefully that will give you some new ideas. But in terms of drawing on Google Docs, there isn't really much there besides an option for you to put the document within your Zoom window, the way we are right now, share the screen and use some of the drawing tools directly in Zoom to draw over it when you're in the session with your students. But separately, like just drawing right on the document, that's not really incorporated into Google the way I think you're describing it. So we are going to do that. And I'm really glad to see some of you are sharing, you learn you can embed videos into Google Forms. We are going to do that in our next session, but I'm glad you're able to do it here. You can embed videos in Google Slides. That's another one that's also very handy. And some of you are sharing other feedback and resources. So fantastic, fantastic. Perfect. Okay. Google Forms is very, very popular. So I think the next topic, next session we will have, you're going to enjoy it as well. Okay, we have around 10, 12 minutes to wrap up. I think I can take you through Google Docs fairly quickly for that. And then next time when we revisit, we are actually going to start with Google Doc, and then we'll have Google Forms and Sheets. Sheets very briefly, mostly Google Forms, and then just a bit of a tail end of Google Docs. So I hope that's okay with everyone. I'm going to quickly go through the slides and share the screen with you. Google Docs, let's go in. I will try to use the same process as I did earlier, where I'm going to give you a very quick overview in our slides, and then I'm going to do a very quick demonstration just to show you some of those features. Again, in the slides, you will have screen captures for some of those, so you can go back and recreate some of those functions or things I will be doing. Plus, you will have our recording. So I hope it will help with some of that. So Google Docs is basically one of those applications that comes with Google products. It's like a Word. For somebody who hasn't been using regular Word for years now, myself, I just got so used to it that when somebody sends me a Word document, it's like, oh, why can't I? No, I'll just open it in Google Docs and I continue working in that. So I don't feel limited by not having Word installed on my computer. Most of the documents I work in or open or share are directly within Google Doc, because I can open Docs directly in Google Doc as well. So vocabulary, Docs, Word documents, and Google Doc is basically that program that allows me to work on documents within Google environment. Automatic saving and editing. Remember, you asked me about that save button. There's lots of nice templates that you can use as well. There's Google search functionality where you can find and insert images. There's voice typing. So you could actually dictate and the system will write out what you want to type. Sharing options, editing options, that's the one where you asked about being able to draw on the document as feedback for your students. I believe that your editing options will be that feature where you can edit or make suggestions for changes or leave notes and comments for your students. So you could, on the side of what they wrote, you can highlight the word, and on the side, you can leave a note or comment for them as well. And so that basically takes them into collaboration, because if you start using those tools, they learn how they can be integrating and using those tools when they're working on reports together, creating documents, writing, and then collaborating in that way as well. It's also available as a phone app, so you could open it and write directly on your phone. I do not suggest it takes forever, but you could. And as I mentioned, you could do Word files directly in Google Docs. So same idea as before. I'm going to jump right into the browser to show you how you can create a doc and highlight some of the features for you, and make sure that you will be able to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing my slide again. And I'm going to take you into a browser. So on top of the screen, you can see I have a few things open from earlier. I'm going to start from scratch again. I'm going to go to a new tab. And in there, I could write drive.google.com, click new, and then go to start a Google Doc. But I also want to show you that I can just type in docs.google.com. That will take me to that document processing, editing, writing section. So in here, think of it as a Word document when you're working with those. I can start with a blank document, so nothing in it, and I can use the different templates. Resumes, essays, all kinds of templates you can utilize and work with. So you don't have to start from scratch. Below, it will also give me a list of documents I recently worked on to make it easier for me if that's what I want to do. So I can just start directly there. You can think of it this way. If it was Word, I just opened Word and I'm seeing an option to start from scratch or access some of the documents I recently accessed. If I click blank, it's going to take me to a blank document. And here, there's just a few things I want to highlight for you. And this is going to be your homework. I'm going to ask you to play with it. So when we come back next time, you can come back with very specific questions as well. So it says untitled document, but if I click right there, I can just call it anything I want. That's going to be my file name for this document. So for now, I'm just going to say Monika test, just because of testing it for today. And as I typed it in, you will notice to the right of it, now it shows the option for a folder, and it tells me the status is, there's a tiny cloud. So basically, it's basically saved. If I click on that folder, it tells me this is sitting in your drive, but if you want, you can move it to this folder. So I'm just going to select it, move, and it's going to go right there. It's going to be now saved in a different folder. So right in the document, I can name it and I can move it and save it in specific folders I want. If I don't have a folder, I could go at the bottom and say, create a new folder for me. And I can move my files and folders that way. So this is the way you can quickly manage your documents that way. Now, the next one is the share button. I haven't really done anything here yet, but if I clicked share, it will take me to the same window you have seen earlier. I can share this document with a specific email address, invite somebody to this document, and they can come and depending, again, I'm just going to use Ambreen's email as example. They could be editing, they could be viewing, or they could be commenting. If I said editor and send it to her, Ambreen can come in and start writing his document at the same time. So that's one way I can share it. Another one is I can give you a link. So right now, only Alpha Plus team can do that, but I can say anyone with the link can either view or edit. Quick tip, if I said edit and send it today right now in this chat, all of you can come in and write in this document at the same time. So if you want to have a fun activity with your students, ask a group of students to go to a document and write a story one word at a time. They can take turns. Person one writes the first word. The person two has to come up with the second word. And you can play a game and have an activity that way. Many different ways in which that can happen. But that basically means you're putting your student into one document and they're working on it at the same time. If I just keep it as viewing, you will be able to open this document, see all the changes I make, even the edits as I'm making them, but you will not be able to do anything because I didn't let you, because I'm giving you viewer rights. So I'm just going to keep it like that and go back here. So your share button is always there. You can always access that. The next tool I want to real quickly show you is our insert images. So I could write a text. Hello, I love my cat, right? That's the text I'm writing. Now I want to add an image. If I click on the image, I can upload it from my computer. If I have a picture of my cat, I can just go and upload it. But I can also search the web. So if I click on that, on the right side, it's going to open a search directly within this Google Doc interface. And I can say cat. It's going to find pictures of cats for me. I can just pick any of those pictures and insert it into my document. It's going to take a second, and voila, I have a picture of a cat. One thing that's also handy to know, if Google is doing search for images, it's searching for copyright permission images. So basically, you can insert those images. You don't really have to worry too much about copyright. If you just go Google search and look for images outside of here, you may run into problems that Google is giving you images that sit on somebody's website, but they are copyrighted because they don't want you to use it. So if you notice that, you will see that there is a difference in the kinds of images you will see if you just search for any image, or if you're working in a Google Doc and you're searching for images, because it is looking for images with copyright permissions. Okay, so that's good to know as well. Now, voice typing tool. So some of you, if you want to try it, I'm going to very quickly do it here. Voice typing, I'm going to enable it. So I went to Tools, Voice Typing, click to speak. And now as I'm talking, and this is directly writing on the document for me, I don't have to do anything. So you and your students could actually write paragraphs by dictating them. Your students could do that. And then you can go back and edit your punctuation, or I can say period, and it's going to put a period for me, comma, it's going to put comma for me. So you could dictate with all those specific characters directly in there, whatever you want to do. And notice I have an accent, but this is not bad for something that's writing up just from me dictating it. If I want to stop, I just click on the voice typing tool and I stop right away. Okay, So this is one of my favorite tools. There's also another tool called Explore that basically puts almost like a browser on the right side for you, and you can search for information. I'm going to go back and say cats again, or cat, and hit enter. Now what you will see on the right side, it's looking for information about cats as a web search, images, and even looking for cat information on my drive. If I find this information and I like it, I can copy it, I can bring it into my document, I can use it as much as well. Or I think I can even drag it. I'm trying to remember how I did it before. Here we go. So I added it in here, and then all this information is coming in for me. I can go and browse a bit more, so that takes me out of my document, but I can still bring in and come back to my document. So all this browsing and searching is here. If I come in here and want to quote this web result, there is this quote mark here that shows up, cite as a footnote. I can even click that, and I could take information from this website, include it in my document, but also take citation from here. So if you're preparing for your students for college or any other courses they may be taking, you could be utilizing this Explore tool to work with that as well. All right. Now, the last thing is adding comments, and I don't want to forget about that. So I'm going to do add comments for this one, and we are going to stop. When we come back, you have extra tips in your slides for the next 2 weeks. Go play with them, explore them, and you will be able to have a good idea of how everything works. So I'm going to close Explore and just very quickly show you that when I'm editing, and anybody else who has access to this document, you can edit, you can suggest, and you can view. If I go to suggesting, I can say that I want to replace the word distinguish with another word. Let's say check, and you will see now the system is suggesting a change, and I can accept it or decline it. So that's one way in how you can suggest to your students how they can make changes in their document without drawing on it. You can basically show them suggestions of what you think should be there instead. Another option is if you move your mouse over your document, sometimes there's this icon that shows up. It's a comment. So another one is I can highlight a text or paragraph, and I can say, this is great, but maybe use a different format or something like that, right? So you could leave comment for your students. So when they come to this document, again, they can see your feedback and suggestions that way. So going back to that question about drawing, you can't really draw on it per se, but you can utilize those tools to communicate with your students, to the point where when I'm doing this comment, I can leave another comment here, just any comment, click on it again. If I use the @ symbol and I know the email or contact of the person I'm working with, like your student, if they have a Gmail address, I can find any of them. I could find them, and basically it will tag that person and send them an email that I left a comment for them in this document, and they need to go and check it. So that's how Google is trying to have people collaborate and work together as a teacher-student or student and student or colleague and colleague within Google Docs, okay? So I'm going to pause and stop for today because it's 4 o'clock. I know some of you will have to go. We got almost to the end. We got a few more slides that we didn't have a chance to finish, but that's good in a way because I really prefer that you try and explore things on your own. You will see extra tips there as well, so you can try them. And when we come back, I'm going to take them up in the next session to make sure we don't forget about them. And on my end, what I will want to do is basically take you to my slides, take you to the last window, because in there, I do have a feedback form that I want to show you. So bear with me, I'm just jumping through my slides. And on the second last, I have a feedback form. So I'm going to put that for you in the chat. And that way you will be able to fill this out as well. So I'm going to copy this link, put it in your chat. All right, have a note. Please feel free to fill it out now. If you do have to go, we are going to send that Google form to you after. So see, it's a Google form. We are talking in more detail about Google Forms next time, but we are also using it to get your feedback. So hopefully you got some ideas. I know there could be a lot of different content. You were coming in with lots of great questions. If I missed anything, I will make sure I take it up in our next session so we don't forget about that. Thank you so much for today. A big thank you to our interpreters who have been extremely patient with me today. Thank you to those of you who are participating and learning as we go. I know sometimes it can be also a bit confusing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, I'll stop sharing and stick around, look at the chat. If there are any questions that you have and you want me to cover now after everybody is leaving, I can do that. I can stay a bit longer and answer any questions you may have as well. Okay? Okay. Okay. Perfect. I'm so glad that you're saying that you will explore a bit further on your own. That's fantastic. I should mention that very often, we can reach out to Alpha Plus, ask us coaching questions, and then we will be very happy to work with you on a longer term, because I know this is just an hour and a half. So there isn't that much that we can cover, but you have been so patient with me today, and then the breakout rooms and everything, and it all worked. So this is awesome. All right. Now, Jen, with the Galaxy 11, I know you had a few questions and you may need to explore something in more detail. So Jen, if you are able to unmute yourself and remind me if I answered any of your questions or if there's something else that you need me to do.
There's a question by Kathy as well,
Okay.
Monika.
All right.
I teach a computer class. I have some students using Word online and some using Google Docs. Many do not have Word these days. I've been learning towards Word online since that matches our workbooks more closely, but I'm wondering if Google Docs is better, seems to be for manipulating pictures in Docs.
Yes. So there is, and just to answer that, there is a shift, of course, right? A lot of users, we are used to Word and we suggest Word because often we have it in our offices or organizations. Even schools often will have Word. So students going to colleges or different schools will have access to those as part of their account. But at home, we often don't. And even if you want to use free Office 365, it's very limited. You will very quickly learn that there are features that are enabled in the desktop version or the paid version that may not be available to you if you're trying to use the free version. And that can be frustrating. So most of the time when I talk to programs, I basically say, go where your students are at. If many of your students are struggling with access to Word, see if you can transfer them into Google Docs. It takes a bit of time for us to get used to it as a tool and a system and how you're going to share and develop some of those resources. But when you get used to it, when you kind of get familiar with it, it makes such a difference for you and for your students. Because if they are learning using Google Docs, Google Apps, and so on, and now they have to create a resume, they can create it like that and they can go and apply for jobs. They learn how to use email. They learn how to use spreadsheets without being restricted by the cost of it. So I would suggest that you try both and introduce them to both environments. And that could be by you taking the Word documents you already have and putting them and converting them or using them in Google Docs so they will open. Occasionally, your Word documents, especially if they're a bit older, the design or layout may shift a bit, but otherwise you should be okay. And if you start using docs with your students and have them go and edit the documents with you, write for you and with you, collaborate, that's exactly the idea behind that. Because when they move on and they work with somebody else or go to school, create projects, that's what they will be asked to do as well. So you're preparing them for that transition as well. And in many schools, they will be asked to use Google products as well. So I hope that helps. Anybody else? Okay, perfect. As somebody says, wish I learned this last year. Before COVID, very likely, because COVID really kind of messed things up. But for many of us, it kind of pushed us to learn and explore new tools. So I'm really glad that that you're trying this and then you're joining us here today. And you're asking, Julie, how complicated is it to convert a Google Doc into a PDF? It's a very good question. It is not complicated at all. If you're still with us, I'm going to show you because you're here, so I may as well do that. I'm going to exit full screen. I'm going to go back to that Monika test with our cat and the system signed me in. Okay, let's see. All right, bear with me. I have to sign into my account. When I do too many things at once, the system says, oh, is it really you? You better re-sign in. Of course, I'm going to forget my password. see if I got this right. Huh? Okay, no, this is work account. That's a different password. Ah, look at that. I think I got it this time. Okay. That's because everybody's looking at me and doing it, and the system is just like, yeah, you forgot the password. That's what it is. All right. What I'm going to do is going to let me do this. One more time. Monica, you know the password. Ah, it's not going to let me. But I'm going to do this in a personal account. So that way I still can do that for you. So docs, I'm going to create a new document and answer the question, how do you save this as a PDF? So I'm just going to put basic test in there, Monica test as well, or just test. I have a Google Doc. If I want to save it as a PDF, you click File, Download, and then all the options you have. So you can download it as a Word document. So it will have a doc extension and you can send it to somebody that you know is using Word. You can open it as an open document, rich document, and PDF is one of the options. So
sorry, Monica, we can't see the screen.
Oh, thank you for that. That's because I switched the screens as well. Here, this is because I'm trying to do this at the same time. Here, share screen. Here. Now you should be able to see it. Do you see my test document?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. I apologize for that. Okay. I have my test document open. It's not the same one because I had to switch accounts, but let's assume I have a paragraph here, an image, and so on. I go File, Download, and one of the options is to download it as a PDF document. So I just click on that, and the system is going to download this document as a PDF. When you open it, it's going to be a PDF as well. So if I do that and open it as a PDF, here it is with a very, very big one-word test. Here we go. Now it's a PDF. All right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, PDF.
So Amanda has a question.
Okay.
It's in the chat. How do I move files from my Facilitator drive
Yes.
to our workspace drive?
Yes, Amanda, you asked that earlier and I asked you to stay and ask me again. So just to clarify, Amanda, and I hope you can unmute yourself so we can hear you. Can we test the microphone? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, Amanda, so Amanda, there you are. So I worked with Amanda before, so very good question, Amanda. So let's to clarify, when you're saving Facilitator Drive and Workspace Drive, is it two separate accounts or are you in the same account and you're using My Drive versus Facilitator? It's two separate accounts. All right, okay. So my suggestion would be to go to the drive. Bear with me, am I still sharing the screen? I'm still sharing the screen, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go to my drive, all the way to my drive to show you. Oh, it's kicking me out from all my accounts right now. Bear with me for 1 second.
If it makes sense, I mean, you can do a video too on Loom if you want.
Yes.
Yeah, whatever you want.
I can do it that way, but just to summarize, I'm going to summarize it and then I'm going to mention that in our next session. Basically, if you think this is two separate accounts, what I would do is on one account, let's say your Facilitator Drive where you have everything, I would put everything under one folder, download it to your computer as a folder, and then open it in your Workspace Drive, so your second account, and upload it back as a folder. That's the fastest and easiest way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is that still going to work because on that drive too, I have folders that other organizations have shared with me. And I guess by default from my Outlook, when I went to download or upload it to the drive, it always goes to my Facilitator Drive. But like I have one folder that's owned by Peel, not me. Will it still allow me to download and give it to my other one, or do I have to ask them for permission first?
we will have to test it because I'm not sure. It depends on the permissions very likely, because very likely it's like a shortcut to their drive rather than actually drive sitting on your computer.
Yeah.
But what I would think will happen is that in most cases, besides shortcuts, so we will have to check that, most of the stuff you will download, even if it was shared with you and it was owned by somebody else, but it's saved in your drive. So not only shared with me, but actually saved somewhere in your drive.
Yeah.
It will actually change ownership. So it will, you download it to your computer as a download file, you bring it up. That's sometimes a way for you to actually take ownership of those files and folders. So I would test and see what happens. If they will actually let you, it may be permissions, because I know Google Drive has changed that recently. That's why that's share with me or add a shortcut instead of just regular drives. They're kind of restricting some of those things a bit more. And I haven't recreated that kind of process to see what will happen.
Okay. And should we, sorry, does someone else have another question?
We can hold off, but go on.
So on the workspace one, the organizational one, I noticed that like that shared drive, do I, because I looked on our workspace, we don't have that. Is that something I have to initiate?
On your own workspace, you don't see shared drives?
Yeah, like the one that's LBS, like the organization.
Yeah.
It's not there. Like it's old, because so for example, the slideshow that you had today, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna put it on the organizational drive.
Yes.
Then I let my manager know and she's like, I can't see it there. She's like, I'm on the drive, but I can't see it.
Okay, so you know what? I know we have access to your account. I'm going to go back and check because it may need to be enabled. Okay, so I'll move it to the side. Now, there's a question from the ASL interpreters. Do we still have somebody from the ASL community that needs the interpretation? And if not, then the ASL interpreters are leaving. So let's just check very quickly.
We did just check in ASL and looked through the chat and also looked through the names and didn't see anyone else using our service right now. So if that's all right, we'll go ahead and leave.
Laura and Marianne, you were awesome. Thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And I know I still have some of you left. Mary, there was a question from Mary, and if Mary is still with us, I'm just checking. Mary is still here, PPR. I thought a PDF meant you can't change it. Can we edit a PDF in Google Docs? So this is the scary part. I'm not going to show it, but if you want to check, Google Docs now allows you to open PDF directly in Google Doc. It may slightly reformat it, but it will allow you to open it. So it's one of those tricky things with PDF specifically, because Google Drive doesn't have a program to display PDF documents to you. It will hold it as a storage place, so you can see your file there, it's saved, you can see a preview of it, you can print it. But if you really want to open it, it will ask you, what program do you want to open it? If you say Google Docs, it will open or convert it into a Google Doc, which becomes editable document that you can write in. So it's one of those features that some people love, because that basically means they can take worksheets that they have saved as PDFs and really convert them into documents that they can now have students edit or work with. And others, because milestones and other documents are also PDFs, find that stressful and frustrating because they worry that students may overwrite or make some changes. So it's one of those tricky things that's happening right now. So in some cases, when I think of PDFs and how you use them in your drive, think of the PDFs in your drive mostly as storage. So it's sitting there in your drive. When you click on it, it's going to open the preview for you so you can read it, you can work within that, but you're not really doing much more with that, because as you want to, then the system says, I don't have a functionality to open it. I'm just going to move it into Google Doc. So we can talk about that a bit more, but I hope that actually helps. Mary, did it help?
Thank you very much. Yeah, that helped a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for asking that question as well. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. And Amanda, you're perfect. So kudos to MTML team for organizing this. We are going to come back in 2 weeks to do more of that. I hope this was useful. Everybody's coming with different background with Google Docs and documents and everything. So that's why today, big start from, really far back, kind of narrowing it. And then if you have any other questions, let me know. Okay. Otherwise, we can wrap up and let Ambreen go to sleep.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Monica, and everybody
No
who
problem.
participated. See you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much, Monica.
Brain.
Thank
MTML.
you.
Okay.
Good night,
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Brain.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
It's morning, so okay.
Oh, good
night, bye.
morning.
Okay. See you. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
Akila.
everyone.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, Gabby. Kathy is there as well. Thank you, everyone.
Gabby. Thank you, Mary.
And Errol is still here with us. Fantastic.
Mhm.